Hi everyone, this is Renan, and in this video what I want to do is to cover the concept of collections in Python. So up until this point we have been talking about simple data types which can hold only a single value per variable. So we have covered strings, booleans, numbers with integers and floats, for example. And now we want to cover more complex data types which can hold several values in a single variable. And in this video, we will start by covering lists, sets, and tuples, which are very similar in nature, although they have their differences and different use cases, which we will understand by the end of this video. And I will also have a different video to cover dictionaries, which are also collections, but they are a bit different, all right? So now let's start by covering lists, which is the most dynamic of the three that we'll be seeing today. So let's start with the one which has more functionalities. And for that, I will create a variable which will hold some students. So let's pretend that we are creating a code for a school and we have some classes with some students and we need to manage those students. All right. So to hold those values, I will create a list, and to create a list I need to use the square brackets. So that's the syntax, and inside the square brackets I can list the items that I will have in my list. So I can insert in here the name of the students, for example Renan. And if I want more items, I can separate by a comma and then I can list the items. So I can have Pedro here and also Carlos. All right, and I'll print this here, and it's students. All right, so let's run this code, and as you can see, it's working. And this here, everyone, is a list of strings. So we can have a list of different data types in Python. So I will show you. I'll create a list called my list, and in here I can have numbers if I want. I can also have a list with float numbers or even booleans, or I could even store another list in here if I wanted. And as you can see, I can have a list with several different data types at the same time, and I want to talk about this because in some programming languages this is not possible, but in Python this here is possible. And this here is the syntax for an empty list. All right, and if I print this, you see that this will work just fine. And another thing that I want to talk about in regards to creating a list is that if you have the use case of having a list with several values which are repeated, for example, for some reason I have a list with several zeros, I could list the zeros one by one as I'm doing here, or I could have only one zero in here and then I can multiply it by the number of times that I want. Alright, so if I save this and if I run this code, as you can see, now I have a list with 5 zeros and I only typed 1 0. So this can be handy if you have this use case. And now I will delete this here so that we can talk a little bit more about the methods and properties of a list. Alright everyone, so first of all, we have our list here and we can see what is the length of our list, and for that we can use the length method. And in this case we have 3 items and this will return the value of 3. Alright, and it's important to understand that a list has indices. So the index of a list will start in 0. So this here is the item at index 0 and here is the item at index 1 and 2. Alright, and if I want to select one of the items from my list, I can do that as well, and for that I can use the square brackets notation in here, and then I just type in here the position of the item that I want, and if I save this it will return Renan. Alright, so this one is the item at position 2, and if I save this it will return Carlos. And one nice thing about lists is that we can use slicing as well. So for example, if I want to return all the items from position 0 until position 2, for example. And with slicing, we are obtaining only the two items in here, starting from position 0. Alright, so this here will return Renan and Pedro. And I don't even need the 0 in here, because if I omit it, it will say that I want all the positions up to position 2. Alright, so it will also return Renan and Pedro. And if I wanted to return Carlos as well, I could add a 3 in here. And the same thing would work if I put the one in here, for example. So right now I will return Pedro and Carlos, so it's not considering the first position now, because it's starting at position 1. So this is slicing. We have covered slicing with strings, so I will not talk much about this in here, but it's nice to know that we also can use the negative indices in here. So if I use the -1, it will return the last item from my list, alright, which is Carlos. And one thing that's important to understand with accessing items from a list is that you cannot access an item which does not exist. So in here we have 3 items in our list, and because of that the last index is at position 2, and if I try to access the item at position 3, which does not exist, I will have an error, which is list index out of range. Alright, because there is no such item here. So it's important to understand that you can only access one item which exists in your list, so otherwise you will have an error in your code. Alright, so now let's see some methods that we can use with our list as well. So we have created the list here with some items, and let's suppose that we want to add more items to our list. How would we do that? Well, we have 3 methods for that, so let's use them here. So we have the append method, which will add an item to the end of our list. So if I save this, you will see that Lucas was added to the end of my list. And if you want to add an item in another position of your list, you can use the insert method. And the insert method will add an item at the position that you specify, and for that you need to tell what is that position, and we need another parameter in here. And in this case, let's add an item to position 0, so it's at the beginning of our list. So Lucas now is at the beginning, and if you want, we can add at the middle of our list as well, as you can see. And one thing that you need to understand is that we have another method, which is the extends, and this extend method is used to add item from other lists in your original list. So for example, if I have another listing here, so students 2 with Lucas and Jorge, and let's suppose that I want to add the items from this list into this first list here. So we could do that with the insert, but it will be kinda not what we want, because in here it will be adding a list inside our list, and that's not what we want. What we want is actually the items from the list. And the same thing would happen with the append method as well. So if I delete this here and run this code again, you will see that another list was added to our list. And the extend method work in a similar way to the append method, in which it will add the items at the end of our list. But the extend method works a little bit differently, in the sense that it will add only the items that we want and not another list inside our list. Alright, so as you can see, that's the difference between the extend, the append, and the insert method in Python. So now let's see a little bit about a method to remove items from our lists. So first of all, we have the remove method, which will take in the name of the item that you want to remove. So for example, I want to remove Renan. I can just, write Renan in here, and now Renan is no longer in my list. And if you want to remove an item by the position, you can do that as well with the pop method. And the pop method by default will remove an item from the end of your list. And a nice thing about the pop method is that it actually returns the item that was removed. So for example, if I print name here, you will see that the name here was removed, as now we have access to it. So that's how the pop method works. And another thing that you can do with the pop method is to pass the index that you want to remove. So for example, if I pass in 0 in here and I run this code again, you will see that now Renan was removed from my list because it's the first item and it's the item at index 0. Alright, so that's how you can remove items from the list. So let's remove this here and this here, and let's see other useful methods that we have with list, and one of them is the sort method. Alright, so let's create another listing here for that. So let's have the grades of the students, and Hannah is grade 10 and then 5 and then 6. Alright, so let's sort those numbers. And if I run this code now, you will see that this list now is sorted in ascending order. So this is a very nice method that we have. So Python has a lot of built-in methods that we can use, right? And if you want to have the items sorted in descending order, you can use the reverse in here, and you can set this to true. And now you will see that you have the 10, 6, and 5 in descending order, and that's how you do it. And we have another method to sort items as well. So as you can see in here, I am sorting the item in place, which means that I am sorting and I am changing the original data that I had, the original variable. And if you want, you can use the sorted method, and you can pass the variable in here, and this will return. So it's grades in here, but it's grades, all right, that I wanted. And we can have the grades 2, and if I print this here and if I print the original, you will see now that we have the original in here, which is 10, 5, and 6, and here we have the sorted one. Alright, so that's how the sorted method works. And now I'll delete this here to show you some other methods that we have. So for example, we can also use the max function in here, and the max function will return what is the largest item at your list. So if I run this, we'll have 10. And we also have the min function, which will return the smallest item, all right, from our list as well. So everyone, those are the methods that we have. Those are some of the methods, right? There are other methods that I will not be covering here today because we have covered a lot. But now I'll teach you how to perform loops in your list as well. So I will have a separate video on how we can loop through items in Python. So there are several different ways in which you can do that. But in this video, I'll teach you how you can loop through a list in Python. Alright, so let's introduce you to this concept. So to loop through a list, you can use the for loop. So in here, you will have a for, and you will need to create a variable to hold the value that you will be looping. And in students, all right, and in here I can print the student. So what we are doing here is basically we are going through each of the items from our list and we will be printing them. And one thing that's important to understand here is that I'm creating the name of the original variable in the plural, so that when we loop through it, we can use here in the singular, so that will be simple for developers to understand what is going on. So that's a good pattern to follow. All right, and if we run this code, you see that each of the students will be printed in here. So that's a loop, and we could perform other operations in here with each item from our list. And if you want, you can have access to the index of each student as well. So for that, you can use the enumerate function, and you will use this like so. And in here, you have access to the index, which then you can also print it. All right, so if I run this again now, you see that we have the name of the students and the index that they have inside our list. All right, so everyone, that's how you loop through a list in Python. And now what I want to do is to cover with you some of the differences between lists, tuples, and sets, and when you use each of them. All right. So I will use the naming here so that you will understand what is which one. So in here we have the students list, and now I'll create another variable, which is the students tuple. And to create a tuple, it's a bit differently. So you will use a parenthesis in here, and then you can type the name of each item. So Renan, Pedro, and Carlos, for example. And all right, this is a collection of items as well, just like the list. And you can, just like the list, access the items from the tuple as well. So for example, you can have a print here, and you can access the item by index because the tuple and the list are ordered. All right, so they will hold the inserting order that you add the items. So as you can see, you can access Renan. And so what is the difference? Well, the difference is that when you create a tuple, you will not change it later. So you will not add new items, you will not remove any items that is already at the tuple, all right? So you use a tuple when you have a constant, basically. So you not need to change anything on it. So that's the use case for the tuple over the list. In other cases, you can just use a list, and then you'll be able to manipulate it as you want. All right, so that's tuples. And now I will create a student set so that we will understand the difference as well. And to create a set, you use curly braces, and in here you can add the items as well. So Renan, Pedro, and Carlos. All right, so with the set, the items are not ordered like the list and the tuple. So if I try to access the item by the index, I'll have an error, all right? So it will not work. And to prove that, I'll also print in here the set so that you will see. So as you can see, it's not the order that I first created. So in here we have Pedro, Renan, and Carlos, and if I run it again, it changes again, and it will change every time because the set does not keep the order, so it's unordered. All right, and you might be thinking, all right, so why would I use a set again? So a set, it's used because they cannot hold duplicates, so that's one use case for a set. So a set, like a list, it's mutable, so you can add and remove items. So for example, if I want to add one item, I will have a method called add, and in here I would try to add Renan again. And if you see this, there is only one Renan because a set cannot hold duplicates, alright? And if I try to add Lucas, for example, now it will work just fine. Alright, so that's one use case for a set, and that's when you would use a set over a list or a tuple. And another use case is when you want to check the existence of one item inside your data. So for example, let's check if Renan is contained in my set, and you can use the in keyword in here like so, and this will return a boolean. All right, so if I run this code now, you see that's true because I have Renan inside my set. And if I try to type George in here, then it will be false because George is not in my set. All right, so that's another use case for a set, and it's important to understand that you can do that with a list as well, so it will work just the same. But the difference between a list and a set and a tuple in this case is that the set is optimized for this operation. All right, so it will be way more performance, it will run way more quickly than when you use a list or a tuple. All right, so you can use a set in those cases. All right, everyone, so another thing that I might cover with you about sets is that they have some interesting methods as well. So for example, if you have another set with some different items, for example, let's create a set here with Renan as well, and let's add a feminine name to be a little bit different, right? So we have set, and let's have a set 2, and let's suppose that we want to check what items I have here that I also have in the second set. So we have a method for that in set, which is the intersection, and if you use the intersection, it will return what is the items that we have in both sets. All right, in this case it's Renan, and there is also the difference. The difference will return what is the items that I have here in my original set that is not contained in my second set. All right, so the set can be used to perform those kind of operations as well. And right now, what I want to do is to just type in here the differences so that you won't forget. All right, so I will introduce you to another concept in programming language, and in Python we can create comments, and to create a comment you use the hashtag, and when you use a hashtag in your code, the Python interpreter will not do anything with that. So this is basically just for a developer which is reading your code to better understand what's going on. All right, so you can document your codes that way with comments. And here we'll add a comment to list the properties of each of those data types. All right, so a list, as we talked about, is mutable. You can add and remove items. It's ordered because you can access the items by the index. All right, and the insertion order is kept, and can hold duplicates. All right, because you can add 2 Renans if you want, 2 Pedros, as many as you want. You can do that with lists, right? So those are the properties. And for tuple, it's mostly the same, but a tuple is immutable. You cannot change it after you create it. And for a set, the difference is that it's mutable, so you can change it, you can add and remove items. It's unordered because it will not keep unordered. All right, because it won't keep the insertion order, and after you create these, as we saw, the order might change every time you print it, and you cannot access the items by the index. And it cannot hold duplicates. So if you try to add a duplicate value to a set, it will not be there when you print it or when you try to check it later. All right, so those are the differences, everyone, and that's what I wanted to cover in this video. All right, so if you like this video, I ask you to leave your like below, because then you'll be supporting my channel, and also subscribe so that you'll be notified when I post new ones. All right, and I see you in the next one.